Welcome to the Awaken Heart Podcast. I'm your host, Nancy Walters. Get ready to create magic and miracles as you lean into your heart's desires. I believe not only does the heart want what it wants, but it knows. This show is a weekly deep dive into what it means to live from an awakened heart. I'll be sharing inspiring stories and real conversations with people just like you, who have turned the ordinary into the extraordinary. My mission is to show you how you too can be connected and heart-centered in every area of your life. Your journey to aligning with more love, more joy, and your wildest dreams come true starts now. Hello, my friends. Welcome back to the Awaken Heart Podcast. I'm your host, Nancy Walters. Today, I've got a very special guest for us. And as I am recording this is end of October 2021. And my Lord, you've heard me talking about this since the beginning because I started this podcast during this pandemic. And as it's extended longer and longer and longer, I've been very vocal. I've been very forward about how I am processing everything that is happening in our world and how I have waken up to the reality of how things are and how things are happening in the world. A lot of people are popping awake right now. This is a time of the Great Awakening. It is the time when everything that we thought was true is proving to be not true. And our whole illusion, if we're willing to take the red pill as you will, is being shattered. It's being disintegrated. And a new us is being rebirthed because of it. What's happening now is there's like a global awakening. And I think the coronavirus that keeps going on and seems to like make less and less sense as time goes on. People are waking up to it. And what's going on in the world with who's currently in power in our country, let alone around the world. You know, there's a very fine line that we have to walk. Like when you do awake, there's a whole process that you go through. Like I know I went through like shock, anger, terror, fear. And then you come back to how, not being afraid to talk about what you know to try to help other people who might be opening their eyes. How do we guide them? How do we create all these people that are beginning to question all that they've known, questioning the systems, seeing all the corruption, seeing the lies that they are? How do we help guide them and put them on an empowering path? I feel like I'm one of the spiritual warriors, and there's many among us that are going to keep an eye on the path and put light of consciousness on what we could be called the darkness that seems to be in control of our reality. And today's guest, Michelle Sorro, is one of those who just had a major awakening to what is going on in the world. She shares with us today her process and what she is doing now and what it has led to her where she has such a big passion and purpose. Because like this podcast, the Awaken Heart Podcast, it is awakening your heart. A little bit about Michelle. So Michelle Sorro is a spiritual entrepreneur and digital CEO on a mission to empower millions to be seen and heard. She helps experts start and scale a high-integrity online impact with digital coaching programs, purpose-driven podcasts, and highly curated boutique masterminds for women. And I had the privilege of taking some of her courses. Some of her programs include the Podcast Accelerator, and that is how this podcast was birthed, was through her program. She has the Fire and Soul Academy, which I was in. It's an amazing mastermind that enables you to launch spiritually driven, heart-based centered businesses and programs. And she was on TV for a long, long time. She was the former retail host for Extra, QVC, HSN, amongst others, and she has generated over $220 million in live sales, garnering over 4,000 hours of live TV. She has also invested hundreds of thousands of dollars in personal, business, and spiritual growth. Michelle also holds degrees in transformational studies and has built a 7-figure online coaching business with zero ad spend. So now taking all of these amazing skills that she has, and she has a wealth of information, not to mention like a golden heart. She is committed with passion and purpose to helping others along their path to awakening out of this matrix. So without further delay, here is today's guest, Miss Michelle Sorro. Welcome to the Awaken Heart podcast, Michelle. I am so excited to have you on.
Nancy, I swear it's going to take having a podcast conversation to allow us to connect again. This is so awesome to be here.
I know, it's so awesome. Michelle, she is one of my biggest mentors. And the reason I am talking to you all today over these airwaves is because Michelle had me, all of us, there was about 50 of us that went through the podcast accelerator course. And this is at the beginning of the pandemic. And we were releasing podcasts. This is before we knew what the heck was going on. It was this great slowdown, and we came out with these podcasts. So she has a podcast accelerator, and because of her, I'm here, because at that point I'm like, yeah, it's part of this course. I don't know if podcasting is for me. And it's the number one thing that I took out of this 10-month course that I did with Michelle is the
Fire and Soul Academy.
Fire and Soul Academy. So I took out the podcast accelerator, and here I am. This is my 36th episode, and it's one of the greatest things that I've done. And I really thank you.
Proud of you. So proud of you too. I mean, 36 episodes, that's 9 in numerology. My brain just did that really quickly, which is the ending of things, which is, I know, a beautiful segue for where we're going to go today, because it's the ending of an old paradigm, an outdated paradigm. And it feels so exciting to be on the other side of that awakening, right?
Yes.
So I'm just really proud of you, my friend.
Thank you. And also the 9, there's 3s in there, and 3 is a very powerful universal number 3 times.
That's right. Good job.
Yes. Yeah. So I gave a little bit of a background for you in the intro. If you could just kind of tell our audience who you are and what you have done before leading up to this new Michelle Sorro 2.0 that led up to this awakening. Like, what is your background?
Okay, so I will just take it back a few years, because I had another big awakening in December of 2017. I was at a Tony Robbins seminar called Date with Destiny. And I went in there as a very part-time television retail host on a show called Extra. And that was my only goal, is to become a full-time host on that particular show, because it was such a dream. And by day 4 of that Date with Destiny event, I woke up to, literally divine intervention, dropped to my knees and heard a voice that said, "You're not supposed to be on TV. That's a little girl dream. It was all about worthiness and wanting to matter in the world. You are here to wake others up." And I was like, huh? That was a shamanic death, is the way that I refer to it, because it was like the complete opposite of what I really wanted to do, I thought. So I didn't know where to begin, but a friend at that event said, "You should start a podcast." And I was like, "A podcast?" Probably not unlike how you heard it, right? Originally, I was like, I literally thought that podcasts were reserved for celebrities and big brands. I was like, who am I to start a podcast? But I did. And my podcast was the first place that I started with just getting a message out there. I didn't even know really what my message was, but I just felt it was important because I wanted to listen to that call from Date with Destiny. And then a few months later, I started my first mastermind. You were in one of those masterminds. And so for the past almost 4 years, I have been a heart-centered entrepreneur, a spiritual and business coach, a lot of different things that are said about me, about what I do. I don't really know how to label it. And I've built a very successful business that I've been deeply proud of. And, a lot of digital courses like what you took, the Fire and Soul Academy, the Podcast Accelerator, Live Sales Mastery, and then other just personal growth masterminds and a ton of one-on-one clients. And then it was last May where I had the first part of what would be the next big awakening. My podcast called Fire and Soul, which means inspired action from an awakened soul. I'd had all my dream guests on. They were people like, Jack Canfield and Alison Armstrong and Dave Asprey and Panache Desai and Danielle Laporte, and even got Tony Robbins confirmed twice, rescheduled twice. So that was my dream list back then. And that's what I was focused on, as those really big thought leaders and entrepreneurs and globally known game changers. Then I came across Plandemic in May of last year. And I watched it. And because I had known Mickey Willis for years through my spiritual center Agape here in LA, I believed in him. I knew he was an honest, moral, sincere, genuine man. And it was so well put together. And every part of my soul knew that everything he was presenting was coming. But it was so fucking scary that I just basically pretended like I hadn't seen it. And I just worked, right? We were in the middle of the lockdown. We had 8 months here in California. And so I worked and worked and worked. My business grew a ton because everybody wanted to learn remote business growth strategies. So my business grew a lot. I really didn't have any time off. I was exhausted and just nose in the computer on a million Zooms. And then it was, well, I don't know if you want more right now. I'm happy to go. I don't need it to be on a monologue.
No, you're doing fine. So yeah, Mickey and Plandemic, like that was an Iowa awakening. So it was the indoctrination. Indoctrination was the second one. And the first one, you watched that one, Julia Mick and all that. And I know his wife very well because we used to do background work together, SAG background work, commercial work forever. And she's an amazing woman herself. And I know it was hard for her for a while. She was really silent about her stance on it. And then this came out and she really stood in like, okay, this is what I believe in, because so many of us are afraid to rock the boat. Like, oh, I don't want to be liked. And, this is such a big thing that, so many people are going to reject me, but like, that's what it comes to, is being okay. Like, okay, you come to this awakening and you have to stand in your truth and what's important to you instead of being so afraid of what other people are going to think. And I see so many people, we see a lot of people in the health industry that really feel the same way we do. And because their eyes have been open, but so many people are afraid to rock that boat and lose their followers or have people not like them. And you came to this awakening where you like are standing solidly in your truth and what you believe in. And there was a process that led to which I think a lot of us go through. Like, we hear about this awakening, we think, oh, the heavens are going to waken up, the birds are going to sing, and like, it's going to be rainbows and unicorns. But no, it's like being shocked. Your eyes are awake. You're like mad at the world. You're scared. Like I was like, I always picture me like crumpled up in a corner, balled up, like shivering and crying. Like literally, it's the awakening.
Nancy, when did you wake up?
Well, my sister had told me about stuff years ago. She woke up a long time ago. So really it was when, after these lockdowns, as they started dragging on, because before that I was like, oh, it's the great slowdown, the earth is going to rest. And I was more about like not paying attention to what was going on in the world. I'd hear about it, but I didn't need to know more. It's like all about love and light and connecting to that, consciousness of fear. I was like a Pollyanna. I didn't know anything. So once we locked down and really had to like, oh, the mask came out and how it kept dragging on. And then I started following certain people and hearing these things. And then I went down the rabbit hole because the rabbit trail, I didn't have anything else to do. I had moved to Portland. 7 months later, we get shut down. I don't have a huge friend circle. I was working, I was coming home, I was going on my walks. So all I had I really had a lot of time to deep dive. And I really went down that rabbit hole. And then I watched things and people were introducing me to things. And my God, my eyes were opened, and then the election happened and I had to find out what political parties were what. And I learned real fast and I went to one side really fast, and I stand in that 100% because it comes to either control or freedom, sovereignty, or, being a slave. So really the last year and a half has been a huge process of being angry and being sad and being like scared to death, waking up every day thinking someone's going to inject me or they're going to take my rights away, to learning how to, bring that back, become the observer of it, know where I am in my truth and know I'm not going to bend in that, and not now taking that and how do I help other people do the same? So it is a whole process. Like, so what was your process like?
Very similar, very similar. So I think when I got my heads out of the clouds, literally meaning I was on Zoom and recording to the cloud, it was during the general election, and I voted for Biden. I at that point, yeah, I did
A
not
lot of people
understand.
did.
Could not. I was so entrenched. I
Mhm.
was so hypnotized. I was so manipulated and indoctrinated to CNN. I believed NCBS this morning. That was like the elevated version of like morning talk show news, and I believed with my whole being in every word they ever said.
Wow.
So, in looking back at that, I can see this has been part of the plan, right? It's decades and decades old. Of course, it's a 6,000-year-old death cult. So, I'm only awake to that more recently. But when I saw that Biden won, there was no joy in my heart. I couldn't understand that in the beginning because I was listening to all of these TV anchors and news anchors that I had been hypnotized to trust. And they'd been in my living room and with me since 2006, right? When Obama was, campaigning. And I thought he was the God of all gods. He was the savior, right? A lot has changed for me. And that was so hard for me, by the way. All of it's been hard just to look at the reality of what is. The morning after Biden was officially announced, which took several days, and we know the election was rigged, and hopefully that will be proved very soon. And when he came out the morning of his, making his big announcement and just talking about what he was going to do regarding the COVID-19 pandemic, my whole entire being just sunk. And I was so depressed. And I was like, somehow felt shame and guilt, for voting for him and not knowing. And then I was like, wait, hold up, but still didn't really know what to do about any of it and was hearing lots of things. Just like you, I had people planting seeds, but I have discovered that in order to be open to a seed that gets planted, that has been given the slur of a conspiracy theory on purpose, by the way, those people, I was like, are you batshit crazy? Right. But it's only because if I was receptive, then it means my entire reality of my entire life would have to be challenged. And the only thing that would come up for me is I've been wrong and I've made bad choices, right? Or everything is not what I thought it was. That's so disorienting that it's oftentimes too painful so that people just stick with
Mhm.
their reality that's very myopic. And that's just where they're going to stay. And so I recognized that I was in the middle of this battle of my soul of wanting to crack open, but not watching TV, haven't turned on my television since November,
Mhm.
um, and didn't watch CNN anymore, but didn't really know why. And it wasn't until February I went to a retreat for a business mastermind in Sedona. And for one reason or another, out of the 18 of us that were selected to join this year-long mastermind, about 15 of us were all in this camp of knowing that we were taking the red pill, right? But kind of making jokes about it. And I didn't even really know what they were saying. But there was one particular girl there who said, you should follow this account, and that account.
Mhm.
And I thank God for her. We're not even really friends, but I thank God for her because that was late February. March and April, I had my true waking up. And that was when I was in the fetal position.
Mhm.
And I was angry and I was drinking and I was overeating and I felt suicidal. I mean, not really, but like I had ideations because it was so painful for me to fathom that A, this could even be done, and B, that how can I live? How can I make a living? How can I won't have internet. I'll be tracked. I won't be able to get a driver's license or car insurance or ever travel or even have money in the bank. And so when I was waking up and it was so brutal and so fast, there was all of that fear and anxiety around how will I be able to live and take care of my fur family and the people that I care about. And it all seemed really, really dark. And that was a good 2 months of pure fucking hell.
Mhm.
So there was that. And then that was almost like the chrysalis, but in a really negative experience. I'm sure the caterpillar doesn't think it's fun, right? Like, what's happening? And I'm losing my body because I was completely melting my conscious mind. And I was having to now reconstruct, well, then what is what. And I then devoured those accounts that had been sent to me as gifts from God. And I still kind of wasn't into the grand ascension and grand awakening rhetoric around it, because I also recognized that my environment was so powerful. I lived in a small building in Santa Monica, 9 units, and I was the only one outside of one girl who never spoke about it that I knew was not vaxxed. And everybody else there, and over the lockdown, we all got really bonded. So on the one hand, in the beginning, it was like the greatest gift ever. It felt like Melrose Place from like the 90s, right? We all hung out every day, have some wine, barbecue, potluck together. I mean, we were outside of our apartments 20 times a day. Dogs would come in and out. We'd just keep the doors open. And then when I was waking up more and more and more, because this was this year, I realized, oh my God, I'm not safe, because I felt like I was going to be hunted. You know, in the beginning, when you first hear it all, you're like, I'm going to be hunted. They're going to, which I do believe is a possibility, but I don't think we're going to get that far. I mean, I'm very excited for today's times, right? And so I was afraid I would never have this conversation. I wouldn't watch anything that I cared to watch on my computer without my headphones. I never had a conversation with anyone without checking to be sure that my phone was on airplane mode. So I was living in a constant state of paranoia. I wasn't like you out there just blasted my mouth, because you were, right? In your stories, you were so angry. You'd be like, hiking. I remember hiking a trail and, so this is what I wanted to say. And I don't even know if you know this. So at that retreat, while they were all kind of awake to all this, still to this day, every single one of them live in complete fear because they don't want to impact their business. They are so afraid of losing money, losing clients, losing followers, losing friends and family, et cetera, right? So they're all aware of this, but doing nothing about it except behind closed doors, which at that point I was fine with. I'm no longer okay with that right now. And I do believe there will be ebb and flow and karma for everybody. However, and I don't wish that on anyone by any means, but I remember that same woman saying, do not ever come out on social media. Mm-hmm. Don't even like people's posts. Unfollow anyone that's being authentic, because you will be given that vaccine hesitant score. And I knew that was a real thing because I had seen a whistleblower from Facebook. And so it was like, depending on if you're fully vaxxed and proving that with your framed photo on a social profile, you're going to have a 1 on a 1 to 10, right? But if you are not posting anything, but engaging on others that are, let's say, anti-vax, which is a terrible slur as well, then you're going to probably have a 5 or a 6. They're going to be really watching you. They've got millions. They're doing this today. Millions and millions of bots that are connecting.
I get tagged all the time.
Oh yeah. Right. And so I didn't post anything. And then I'd had enough. I hit the wall. It was late July, early August. I went to a flower ceremony retreat in LA, and all I wanted was just peace in my heart. I wanted to open my heart again because it felt so closed and so full of fear for the whole year. And I was drinking up to a bottle of wine a night. Some would say that's not a lot. For me, that was a lot. And I hadn't drank for 4 years, and I love my life with no alcohol in it. And so I was just like, whoa, I am soothing all this pain away, all this anxiety away. And so I went to that retreat. I definitely opened my heart, and I was shown what it feels like to have no fear. And that next morning I called up, I had 2 coaches, and I let them both know this is not a fit. I will not live in fear. I am bowing out. That was $60,000 of investment. I lost it all. I didn't care. And then I decided I was going to come out on my podcast, but I didn't really know how to do it. And by the grace of God, I found this girl on Instagram one day. Her name is Ruby Freeman. She's got an incredible book called Potent Leadership. And she had a very similar journey. And I was watching her stories, and she was talking about how, and it's exactly what I went through all year with all my launches, all my old program launches, nothing felt aligned. And I couldn't make sense of it. These were my passion programs. Mm-hmm. These programs work. They were so effective for so many people. I've made a lot of money, and they've made money. And I was so proud of everything that I had built from scratch. And yet nothing felt aligned. And all I wanted to do was cry and be in the rose garden or at the beach. And I was just like, what is happening? And so when she shared her story, this Ruby Freeman, I just started like gobbling up everything that she posted. And I was like, this is it. It's potent. It's sovereign. Just like you said, are you going to live in sovereignty or slavery? And I was like, then I suddenly was like, for me, this is a personal choice. I was like, I am a coward if I don't come out for the truth that I know I'm here to serve. But it was so scary in my mind. Here's the crazy thing. When I did come out with a few posts and then the first podcast episode, I didn't get one single ounce of backlash. I got
Mhm.
nothing but just tons of pouring in of support and encouragement and like, thank you for showing me that I can speak up. I'm talking hundreds of people.
Mhm.
And for my size of a following, which is not that big, that was the most I had ever received in my entire life. And I was just like, you know what? This is what it takes. Coming out with positivity and encouragement, but also letting people know it is time to wake up, right?
Mhm.
And so now is an exciting time because I'm on the other side of it. It's like a weight was lifted from my shoulders. And I'm just very clear that there's no turning back. And I'm also not interested and have no time for someone who wants to debate it. I'm not interested in educating anyone or trying to wake anyone up. I'm going to continue to plant the seeds because we're at a point right now where it's like, you're either going to get it or you're not going to get
Mhm.
it. I wish you no harm, but God bless you.
Mhm. Because it's like you can't, someone that's sleeping, like think about trying to wake them up and you're blaring this light on them and they're just not going to want to see it. You have to plant the seeds. They have to awaken and be ready to waken up on their own. And then we just show them the pathway.
That's
We
right.
like the way for them to follow. And you had said earlier, just like about how, you were indoctrinated by CNN, because it's indoctrination and it's not just watching that. See, I think I had a little easier of awakening because I stopped watching the news about 12 years ago
Oh,
because I
awesome.
didn't like the way it made me feel. Everything was very negative, racism, like child abuse, all this. I'm like, no, I don't want to feed in the collective consciousness of fear. So I stayed away from it. So when it came time for me to awake, I saw it right away, saw it, and was trying to warn people like, don't vote for this person. And as we can see, a lot of people did vote for him because they didn't like the orange man because he was like shed in this very bad light. But then everything that happened right away, like what he was signing, everything has been a lie and everything has been reversed. So this whole administration is, I can't even go there. Like it's bad. And it goes back into that history of like you were talking about how this has been planned for all the years. And here we are, it's happening with the news. There's actually something called electronic modification frequency, and that is what happens. So people that have been led the wrong way with all these news, indoctrinated, literally, there's modification pulses that are actually hypnotizing and brainwashing people. There's so many brainwash, but you had the courage, and I honor you for this, to have your whole paradigm be shaken up and you had to re-examine what you believed in before and how wrong you were. And
Mhm.
so many people are afraid of shattering that whole illusion of what they believed in. And it's like people like you having the courage to like, oh, I was wrong. Oh, okay. And
Mhm.
opening up to the way things really are and having.
Yeah, well, at first, as I told you, like it was so scary and so painful. And then I went into a shame cycle. And so I'm no longer there because I know that I was innocent, right? I was just a target of the propaganda and a very curated talking points that Hollywood's very much a part of, and the whole thing, right? This is decades and decades of
Yes.
planning, and we're here. And so, but when I was recognizing the shame cycle that I was in, that's where I started to notice for myself, ooh, whatever's happening in the macro collective level of that side is also going to show up on a micro level, right? And so if I'm participating in staying quiet, it's because I have been indoctrinated into the macro perspective. Or if I'm feeling shame, it's because I haven't resolved my own trauma, my own personal wounds, my own massive distrust of virtually all things and all people. So this required me in the most beautiful way to open myself up to the world that I believe that we are stepping into and we're going to co-create, of a world with trust and faith and beauty and light and love. And when you feel drawn to that light because it's so glorious and it's so familiar, right? The soul
Mhm.
knows that's truth. When you can really open up to that, then you're like, oh, I can see this was just programming. It wasn't my fault. I don't have to
Mhm.
live in a shame story that became an identity from a 4-year-old or a 5-year-old, an 11-year-old, or wherever it began, right? And it's ancestral and karmic and all these things. But when you can look at this from the true spiritual perspective that I believe is here to teach us, if we're bypassing that piece right now, then I think that we're missing so much of the opportunity for what we're really awakening to.
So having compassion for yourself and for the process, and then really looking at where we all have those deep karmic wounds or this familiar or DNA activation within ourselves that might not even be ours. So it's actually going within and healing that within ourselves and healing the collective at the same time.
Yeah, yeah. And the other thing that I've realized is, and I don't know what your experience has been like, is when I'm talking to people that I really care about or that I love deeply, and they are completely on the other side, if there's a side, but let's just say there is, of the narrative. And maybe it's like my dad or my mentor who got the 2 shots and the booster, the first booster. It's like,
Oh God, he got the booster. He got
yeah,
the booster?
well, I think he did. I'm not sure. He was supposed to get it last week, although I don't know if he did. And so we don't talk a lot, and we haven't. And that's been going on for my whole life. I know my mentor did, and so in that conversation, it's recognizing it's. I'm learning, and it's been a little clumsy, and I share about this on my own show for purposes of, if this can help you, I hope it does, because this is me in it, right? And then I can look back with hindsight and see what I could have done differently, and it might just be this most almost like imperceptible nuance of a shift in my language or in my intention or focus on the conversation. So I noticed there was something coming up in me that wanted to rush to having them wake up or see something that I thought could be the beginning of them maybe opening up even more. But what it did instead is it either caused a complete shutdown and or massive fear. And I don't want either one of those things. So what I'm learning to do is to have conversations with people that I love and not even try to educate or inform or anything, and stay focused on the quality of the actual connection. And I don't just mean the words that we're talking. I mean feeling it, because that's part of the grand awakening. Feeling, can this person sense my love? Am I dropped in to my heart? Right? And can I stay there no matter what's happening? And we don't have to talk about that stuff at all. Because I watched my mentor, who's 72 years old, I watched fear come over her eyes when I dropped a tiny little nugget of Bill Gates and making public statements about wanting to depopulate the world. And I thought that was out there as common knowledge. It scared her so much. It freaked her out, and was the first and only time I'd ever seen her say, whoa, she backed up from the table and, I can't do this. I can't do this. I'm not doing this. I was like, I had no idea that she didn't even know that kind of stuff. And so there are going to be people that it might be their soul contract to be right where they are. But how do we know that their soul's purpose is not to help us stay more compassionate in these times, right? Because if we're going into the grand ascension, which is where I believe we're already going, right? It's already done. We've already won. That's what I believe in my heart. It's going to play out. It's going to get really bumpy and really rough. And we have to stay sovereign, right? Focus only on what we want and what we're going toward. And that shows up, like I said, on the micro every single day. And so all of this matters. All of it matters right now. How we talk to ourselves, how do we talk to others? And then how quickly can we see what we wish we would have done differently and bounce back and do it a little better the next time? But that quality of connection versus the conscious content that's being expressed in a dialogue. Let go of that. That's just stuff that's been programmed, right? From maybe either side. But if we can focus on the quality of the connection, I do believe that that is another powerful method to maybe wake others up, just by continuing to do your stuff, post your stuff, put out podcasts, all these things. And they love you. And they're like, maybe, right? I don't know. I'm not doing it for that reason, but that's going to work, I think, a lot better than saying, how do you not know this?
No, of course not. And I find that people like us that are awakened are really like, we don't push it on other people. When we see that fear, like you had said, or that there's walls around it, we'll back off. But yet I find the other side is just like, you're this bad person. It's like, how do we not get this trigger? Okay, let's not talk about this. This is kind of where I go. Let's not talk about this. Luckily, most of the people around me feel the same way I do. So I've got a really big support network, but you see it in posts or you see it randomly, like you're hearing people talk about it. I usually just end the conversation because I don't even want to go to that round where you're wrong, you're this bad person. And, forcing bodily things on other people, I can't even understand it. So I'll just shut off the conversation with that. But it is to each their own to find their own way. And like you said, it's to be compassionate and to really listen with the heart and to tune in and be there for the person when they do.
And I so love that, Nancy. And the only other thing that I wanted to add, in case it's helpful to anyone who's not quite, feeling brave enough or courageous enough to speak up, because I know what it was like for me. It was torture. Like I have put out 140 podcast episodes, and to record that particular episode of my reimagined podcast that was going to be designed almost exclusively for courageous and compassionate conversation in today's times, right? And where we focus on my podcast is being able to maintain intimacy and connection with polarized views, and or describing, like what we're doing here, what was it like when you were waking up, right? What was that process like? Because there's different stages, right? Then there's the, let's say once you're not awake, then there's the waking up and that disorienting, like mind fuck. And then there's the, I'm fully awake, but I don't know what to do with it. Then there's the, I'm awake, and here's what we're going to do. Here's our plan. And that's what's happening all over the world. I mean, to me, it seems like more than half the world is awake. And it's just because I'm in that reality, but it's a very exciting time. So what I wanted to just share or offer up to any of your listeners, in case it's helpful, or for anyone they know, is for every single person to speak up, and how you want to speak up, that's going to be personal, right? And you have to do it if you're feeling called to do it, but just know that it's still going to feel scary. It's just like starting a podcast or learning how to walk or ride a bike, or it's all scary because it's the unknown. And you literally think that the big bad monsters are going to come and get you, but they're not. They are not, right? Thank God we're still living here in the US. Yes, you might get censored. You might get kicked off a social media platform. There are so many other platforms. Do you know the day that we had the the Facebook, WhatsApp, and Instagram outage, 70 million, 70 million people went to Telegram that day? New users.
No, I didn't know that.
So there's a lot of different ways to connect, and you've got to get creative and start to look for that. And like I created my own channel on Telegram, and it's small, but it's growing. And so, but the whole point is that once you do it, even scared, you're like one stake in the ground for your sovereignty. And it does feel like a weight of bricks has been lifted from your shoulders, because you're like, oh, I'm gonna be okay. And if you get backlash, I haven't yet. I don't get negative comments. I've been very blessed. I don't know. It is what it is. I don't even get into those polarized conversations. I just have friends that might have gotten jabbed, or boosters, or family, but that doesn't mean we're divided, right? And it's a beautiful thing. But is that if you get that, you can choose what to do with it. You can either, come back with love and compassion, or delete and block. I mean, again, if they are true friends, then friends agree to disagree and hear each other out, or just say, let's just not have this conversation, which was my mentor. The next morning we texted, and I said, I'm so sorry if that conversation got really challenging or really hard for you. I care about you so much. I would never want to scare you. And she started the text. It was like 6:30 a.m. She started it with, Michelle, I love you. And nothing will ever take that away. She's like, and friends sometimes just must agree to disagree. So let's just do that with this topic. And then, we made plans for the next time we're going to get together. And I just thought, that's a sign of real friendship. I could be accountable for how I navigated a clumsy part of that conversation, assuming that she knew, which we should never do. And then I came forward with that, and we then were able to come back together and heal our beautiful connection of 21 years. And so there's no one way to come out, but when you do, you feel like you're part of something. And when you don't, and there's a part of you that could easily feel complicit.
Yeah. And there's such an amazing community that I feel so connected to, because it's all these freedom fighters and patriots and people that want freedom for your bodily autonomy. Because listen, we were so busy and distracted and just going on with our normal lives. I think the world needed this big wake up, because there was so much darkness going on for years and for a millennia under the surface. And now it's all popping up to be like healed and transformed. Like, I mean, there's so much more than just what's going on with these vaccines, which is
the vaccine
total crimes against humanity. It's not even a vaccine, but there's so much to that. And then the political and the election fraud
stuff on this show.
Oh, I'll talk about anything.
Yeah. I mean, we don't have time today, but that's an important piece to have a discussion about, but anyway, do you feel that we've already won, we being the collective of the light?
I've recently come to that recently come to that where I don't wake up every day like scared to death, and sick and like, how can I go on? And I think it was just after the Afghanistan, and then the clown, I can't call him the president, came out like 2 days later and
Well,
talks
he's
about
not the
masks on
president.
children.
He's
Yeah.
not the president. Let's be
No,
clear.
he's not. Masks on children. I'm like, oh, I thought I was losing my mind. I'm like, I ordered Stress Be Gone because I was in so much stress. My sister said, like, just to calm me. Now I'm calm and I know where I stand. I believe we've already won. I've heard that, and not to get lost around like with, what do they call it? The illusion, or we're in the matrix. We're in this movie that we're watching being played out, and we have won. We've won. We're the ascended.
Well, so all the people that I've been following now that I trust implicitly, I mean, it's very clear that we won, but there's a lot more that needs to get worked out. And the first thing that has to happen, I know we have to go in like a minute, but the first thing that needs to happen is to break up the control of the propaganda from mainstream media.
Oh, yes.
Another thing that obviously has to happen is, and will happen, is the decentralization of the financial system, because it is a system, it's a slavery system. And so I think from everything that I'm hearing and reading, that's going to happen. I mean, listen, I do not get attached to timelines anymore. I've learned my lesson on that, but a lot of people are saying by the end of this year. And so I have already felt an energetic shift that's so radical. Everything feels lighter and cleaner and optimistic. And so now it's just like, okay, there's a lot of people hurting. There's a lot of people dying. There's a lot of people so afraid. There's a lot of people mourning, and they might be completely asleep, right? And they don't know what's going on. Or those of us who are awake and we're hurting for our fellow humans. It's just horrible to see what's happening in so many places around the world. But yet then you can equally look at, like, in war, there will be loss of life. There will be casualties. And I don't say this lightly, like, there are sacrificial lambs. Frank Clark was a sacrificial lamb. And so I am praying for their hearts, for their souls, for their families. And yet at the same time, all of that is causing so many unions and organizations to step up and to rise up, police and nurses and doctors and scientists. And they are saying, that is it, not on my watch. And they're fighting for us. And it's so beautiful and so empowering. So it's like, okay, just stay focused on the movement and the progress and the encouraging things that are happening all over the world. And God help them for trying to do anything like they're doing in Australia and Italy and Canada, here in the States. Good luck.
God bless America. God bless people like you. Like, boy. Yeah. Well, Michelle, your podcast has become 2.0. You're going to have all these amazing conversations. Like, what is next for you? What is your mission going forward? Do you have any new programs that's going to help people align?
I do not know anything.
Yay.
The one program that I know that I will continue, I'm deeply passionate because it still aligns with so much of what my purpose has been, that's still there around empowering, people to be seen and heard, especially now. The Podcast Accelerator is still very much there. We are dedicated to that program. It's grown quite a bit since you were in there in the first round. And anything outside of that, not a clue. Packed up out of my apartment, put everything in storage. Don't know where I might reside permanently. I don't even know if I'm supposed to know that right now. I'm just going one day at a time. I booked 3 different trips: Montana, Florida, and Texas. Thought maybe I would move there. Canceled trips because I was like, not moving there, not moving there, not moving there, or at least right now. Really listening to my intuition. I am being so divinely guided and protected every step of the way. And guess what? Abundance and prosperity are showing up in all these miraculous ways. It's not miraculous when you're tuned in, right? And I'm like, wow, I just earned more. Like, for example, in the month of September, and I didn't even launch a program over the year before. And I was like, interesting. So I'm just trusting in this, but I do believe it's all around sovereign leadership, and it's all around speaking up and doing really potent, like, curated masterminds, maybe for women. It's going to look and feel different, but I know that I'll know what to do when it's time to do it.
You always talked about less hustle and grit and more inspired action. Like, you are at the epitome of this inspired action, like literally surrendering to and trusting the universe will provide. Not have to like hustle, hustle, hustle. Because man, girl, you are a hustler. Like you've created so many amazing things in your life. But now that you're even surrendering, you're like actually dropping more into your femininity that I've ever seen. So it's a beautiful thing to witness.
It is a beautiful, important time to be alive.
Yes. Thank you, Michelle, for leading the way. And where can people find you? I know we have to go.
I am anywhere and everywhere, just simply at Michelle Sorro.
Okay, great.
Yeah. Nancy, thank you for having me on. We've known each other for what, 20 years?
Yes.
And we have seen each other grow and evolve, and I'm so proud of you. And by the way, thank you for being one of the first people to ever be so goddamn brazen and brave in all those stories. You were so fierce. And look at you now. You've come into a softening because you're like, we're good. Mm-hmm. We're on the next stage of this beautiful party, right?
Yeah, we are.
Yeah. And so I just want to thank you for helping to lead the way so long ago.
Thank you. Thank you. I didn't ask one last thing. I know you have to run. An awakened heart. What is that to you? I think you've explained it this whole way through, but
what comes to mind as I literally hold my heart is it feels like sitting in my heart, being in my heart, and staying connected to the connection, the feeling of it. So that means I look out at the tree or a bird in flight or just the quality of this connection here. That feels very awake and very alive and very juicy.
Being present in the presence. Thank you, Michelle. It's so great to have you on.
Thank you, my love.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of the Awaken Heart podcast. If you've enjoyed what you've heard today, share it with a friend. And if you haven't already, head on over to your favorite podcast app to subscribe, rate, and review. If you have any comments, questions, or feedback, you can reach me at theawakenheartpodcast.com.